This is the tale of Princess Elisabeta. Her name is remembered in whispers of history, but behind the legend stands the truth of a remarkable woman. She was born a princess, raised in stone halls high above rivers and forests, and destined to carry the weight of her people. Yet, Elisabeta was never only a daughter of duty. She was a woman of mind.
Movements suggest a feint towards the north, but the true assault will come from the west, where our defenses are weakest.
Music and spirit, who sought to shape her own path. From her earliest years, she showed grace beyond her station. She was taught to read scripture, to write with elegance, and to speak in Latin as easily as her mother tongue.
Read this line carefully, Elisabeta.
Amo, amas, amat.
Scholars who visited the court were astonished at her wit. But Elisabeta was not satisfied with memorizing lessons. She hungered for knowledge. She asked questions that startled her tutors.
But tutor, if the geometry of the throwing arm is altered thus, would it not grant greater distance at the cost of accuracy against moving targets?
But what if we were to feign a retreat to draw their cavalry into the narrow pass, then ambush them from both sides?
And she pressed beyond the limits of what was usually permitted to a young noblewoman. Where other ladies of rank were content to embroider or gossip, Elisabeta reached for instruments. She could play the harpsichord, but her true love was the harp. When her fingers touched its strings, music bloomed like water flowing from a spring. She often sat by candlelight in the great hall, her voice rising to join the chords she played. Servants paused in their work, guards lowered their heads, and travelers who heard her swore. Her singing was unlike anything of earth, clear, sorrowful, and full of longing. In song, Elisabeta poured her soul into the air, and for a moment the cold stone castle seemed to glow with warmth. Yet she did not spend all her days enclosed in walls. Often, when lessons were finished and the duties of the court grew heavy, Elisabeta escaped to the riverbank below the fortress. There, in the shade of willows, she would sit with a book resting in her lap, the sound of the flowing water mingling with the rustle of pages. Sometimes she read histories of old kings, sometimes poetry, sometimes treatises on philosophy that her tutors had reluctantly allowed her to borrow. In those quiet hours, she seemed a part of both worlds, the scholar and the dreamer, absorbing wisdom while watching the river carry its secrets downstream. It was there, beside the water, that her thoughts grew deepest, and her imagination opened paths far beyond the confines of her castle walls. She was no less curious in matters of the earth. At dawn, she walked the gardens with a woven basket, gathering herbs and roots. Chamomile for calm, willow bark for pain, sage for cleansing. She memorized their powers and learned to prepare them. But she was not content to stop there. With the care of an alchemist, she mixed tinctures, teas, and ointments, experimenting to see what might heal the sick or comfort the weary. Knowledge to her was a kind of freedom, a way to turn observation into power and compassion. Another of her passions was falconry, a pursuit usually reserved for noblemen. With a leather glove on her arm and a keen-eyed falcon at her side, she would ride into the fields, the wind pulling at her dark hair. She trained the bird patiently, trusting its wild spirit while guiding its flight. When it soared and returned, she felt a thrill of kinship, both of them bound by loyalty, yet alive with fierce independence. Her days unfolded like a tapestry. In the morning she might be found with parchment spread before her, quill scratching notes into the margins of an old manuscript. By noon she was outside, riding along the hillsides or calling her falcon into the sky. The afternoons often drew her back to the gardens, where she studied plants under the golden light, hands stained with earth, but eyes shining with curiosity. At night, her harp rang through the castle's halls, sometimes joined by her singing, sometimes carrying only the voice of strings. Each part of her day reflected a different facet of her being: scholar, healer, rider, musician, and princess. By the time Elisabeta reached full maturity, she had become striking not only in appearance but in presence. Her black hair fell in curling waves, her eyes carried the intensity of her thought, and her movements held both grace and quiet strength. Many suitors came, dazzled by her beauty and eager for her title. She answered them with courtesy.
My lords, your gifts are indeed generous, but my heart looks beyond these castle walls.
But little more, for she dreamed not of jewels and empty flatteries, but of love both brave and true, love that would stand equal with her spirit. It was this spirit that set her apart. Elisabeta carried herself with the dignity of a princess, yet she possessed the boldness of someone who belonged to the wider world. She was unafraid to challenge customs, to ask questions that others dared not, to ride further into the forest than propriety allowed. And though some whispered that she was too restless, others saw in her the qualities of a leader: intelligence, compassion, and courage. Those who served her remembered her not for grandeur, but for kindness. A stable boy recalled how she once tended a falcon's broken wing herself, rather than handing it off to servants. A maid whispered that she had seen the princess slip a book of psalms into the hands of a grieving widow. A soldier swore that on winter nights, her harp music had carried through the barracks and made even hardened men fall silent. Her influence was not only felt through command,
Tell me what
but through
troubles
the
you.
gentle way she lifted others. She lived at the edge of two worlds,
My lady,
bound by duty to
your
her station,
kindness means more
yet
than you
yearning
can
to
know.
breathe freely beyond it. She found that freedom in song, in the rush of wings above the fields, in the quiet study of herbs, and in the gentle murmur of the river where she lost herself in books. Through these she carved out a life that was hers, not only given by her birth. This was Elisabeta before fate changed her path. Before love and loss wrote her name into tragedy, she was already a woman of legend, a princess who studied the mysteries of the earth, who mastered both harp and falcon, who sang with a voice that stirred hearts, who walked with curiosity as her lantern. And it was this same spirit that, in time, would lead her toward a man whose own destiny burned with shadow and fire, a man whose story could not be told without hers. His name was Vlad, warrior, ruler, and soul entwined with her own. And so, the memory of Elisabeta lingers. Some picture her in a hall of stone, fingers gliding across harp strings. Others imagine her at the river's edge, closing her book as twilight falls, the water reflecting the first stars of evening. Or else they see her falcon rising into the sky, wings catching the fading light, soaring higher and higher, as if carrying her spirit into the vastness of eternity. Thus begins the story of Princess Elisabeta, not merely as the beloved of a prince, nor as a figure of sorrow, but as a woman whose life was a song bright, searching and unforgettable.